the special talks which has been designed to look at cross-cutting themes in this dialogue. The reason why we have these experts talk to you about cross-cutting themes is that food systems are complex. We have tried to analyze them in different silos. We did a much larger exercise last dialogue in 22, and still we found that we haven't completed the whole thing. So we thought we will have experts talk to you about cross-cutting themes, and we have an outstanding panel to speak to you in the next 1 hour, or is it more than 1 hour? Yeah, 1.5 hours, Hari? Okay. We have, of course, David Nabarro, whom you know. So David, welcome. I don't think I need to introduce you. You have been introduced. So take any chair you like except this one. Yeah. We have Mr. Kuldeep Chand from NABARD, who is the Deputy General Manager. So I suppose, please take it. Please sit down. Please sit down. We have Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. And we have Mr. Faiz Ahmed Kidwai, Additional Secretary Agriculture. Now let me give you a brief introduction of the panel. I don't think I'll introduce David. I don't have the stamina. He has done so many things. He has been here from the first dialogue itself. We consider him as our mentor, as a guide, as a friend, and maybe a critic as well. So David would be probably bringing in global experience, and of course he had a long conversation with me and Ramesh Chan during the break on what India is trying to do. So I suppose he will bring in the cross-cutting themes effectively from the global and national perspective. We have Mr. Kuldeep Chand, who has had about 25 years plus of experience in NABARD in natural resource management, agriculture financing, and has worked in states across the country from Andhra Pradesh to Himachal, Chhattisgarh and Maharashtra. So he'll be bringing focus from a financing angle. NABARD has been, ever since its separation from RBI's ACD into an independent body, been the biggest financier of large number of programs which benefit rural development and agriculture. So we'll hear a perspective from him on what lies ahead, what is the future, what does NABARD intend to do in the context of what is happening around in the food systems and the climate change that we are trying to address. We have Mr. Faiz Ahmed Kidwai, who is an additional secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. That's a familiar place for me. He deals with climate change, among other things, like marketing and FPOs, but I think he is remembered more for his great work done in Madhya Pradesh. In fact, today you heard Ramesh Chand talk about how in the last 15 years Madhya Pradesh has done remarkable progress in the field of agriculture. And in fact, I read a nice little piece by my good friend Harish Damodaran that BJP won because of all the work done in agriculture by Shivraj Singh Chauhan. So, well, I don't know how to introduce Soumya. Soumya is has been, I think I met her when she was DG ICMR. And that's the first time I met her. I was in NDDB. We were trying to look at some vaccines, and that's where I first met her. Then she moved to WHO, and you would have seen her during COVID times, her role of chief scientist in WHO, and how globally she tried to manage the COVID outbreak Of course, Soumya by herself is an extremely important person in this country's policy planning space. She just happens to be the daughter of Dr. Swaminathan. I think that's probably a fair way of introducing you. In fact, we would like to hear from Soumya about, she's a medical professional, so about nutrition, how it gets connected to, because today, somebody said people in nutrition don't speak to agriculture people. And that's one of the problems that we have. Or agriculture people don't speak to nutrition persons. So this was something that was... But anyway, we would like to hear Soumya's perspective, both from the national and the global angle. And Soumya, I would also request you to bring in a gender perspective into the discussion. So let me first call Mr. Kidwai. About 10 minutes, is that a fair time? Or 10 to 15? Yeah. You want to speak from here?
Thank you, sir. I think respected panelists on the dais, I would briefly concentrate on the areas which I look after and a flagship program which the ministry is currently undertaking, the digital agriculture. Since I look after climate change and rain-fed agriculture, so I would like to begin with that. Most of us know 50% of our net zone area is rain-fed, and it's supporting about 40% of the food basket and diversity in the country, and close to about 45 to 50% farmers are from the rain-fed areas. With climate change, this is the most vulnerable area. There is drought, there are heat waves, rainfall patterns are changing, and the rainfall which we are getting, the time has shortened and the volume has increased. All of us are witness to that, and I think these areas are the worst affected. And another thing which is very typical to these areas are that the concentration of, as it is, we have 86% of small and marginal farmers, but the concentration of small and marginal farmers is more in these areas. And typically you would hear stories about parts of Maharashtra and Andhra and Telangana. So this is a challenge which the ministry is facing, and how we are looking at it is something which is important. So we have something known as the Rain-Fed Area Development Scheme, where we promote integrated farming. Now, what is integrated farming? It is basically you're not dependent on monoculture, and it's a more diverse basket for you, so that in the case of any climatic eventuality, you are resilient to face it. So it's not only farming, it's intercropping, it's livestock, agroforestry, fisheries, and horticulture, and of late millets, which are climate resilient crops, are being promoted in these areas, which is I think a good thing. We had lost millets, and I think the UN Year of the Millets and the initiative of India and branding them as Shriyan, these are the marketing initiatives which have really brought them to center stage, and which is good. So a part of the Rain-Fed Area Development Scheme, we plan to expand it. It is and the implementation framework is also being changed. Another thing which the ministry is taking up on a large scale is we're coming out with a framework on climate resilient agriculture. So it is not there that it wasn't there. It was there, but now it's bringing in all the programs together, and with a more focused approach. What had happened was that ICAR had mapped about 650 districts which on a certain vulnerability index out of close to about 770 districts in the country, and they had made district agriculture contingency plans in these districts. Out of these, they identified about 310 districts which were climatically vulnerable, which were the vulnerability was higher. They were they were categorized as high risk and very high risk. And then, so this program has been going on for close to 10 years now. And there was research on climate resilient technologies and varieties in these districts. Out of the 2200 or more varieties which have been released by ICAR since the last 10-12 years, about 1888 varieties are climate resilient varieties which are being promoted in these areas, so that there is a resilience, and the way they are doing it is through a program called NICRA, which is National Initiatives on Climate Resilient Agriculture. So in about 460 villages out of these 330 districts, what is being done is that these varieties are being released to the farmers and are being promoted, so that and the approach is that it's a hub and spoke kind of a model, so that the farmers here, once they develop, once they get used to these varieties, the neighboring farmers, other villages also come on board, and these are being tested in different agroclimatic conditions throughout the country. That is the long-term plan. Now, under the framework, which is the CRA framework which we are developing, we plan to scale these 460 villages to 10,000 villages. And the whole idea is to go for a community adoption approach of climate resilient agriculture through village level and grassroots level institutions. So this is the broad thinking of the ministry on this, and our framework has been approved, and we are going to the Ministry of Finance with that. Basically, expanding these 460 villages to 10,000 villages across the country, and looking at each and every agroclimatic zone, so that this model works, and then this model is replicated, and from these 10,000 we want to go to 1 lakh villages, in the sense that we believe that one village will at least be a school for 10 neighboring villages, so that 10,000 becomes 1 lakh over a certain period. That is one broad approach. Second is we have come out with a VCM framework, Voluntary Carbon Market Framework for Agriculture. 60% of our geographical area is under cultivation, and when we talk of the contribution of agriculture to greenhouse gas emissions, it ranges from about 15 to 17%. That is what agriculture contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions. There is a national mission on sustainable agriculture which promotes sustainable agriculture, the various methods of sustainable agriculture. These are already going on. You've heard of organic farming, you've heard of natural farming, and such other initiatives. As it is, we are very low on chemical and fertilizer uses if you look at the country as a whole until now. Now, what this framework basically envisages is the VCA to encourage farmers through carbon credits to adopt sustainable agriculture. They are already doing it, but it has not been monetized. They are not getting any benefits out of it. So do it on a big scale, and so that at least they monetize it, and then once some farmers start getting benefit out of sustainable agriculture, the thought is that other farmers too will start adopting it and start monetizing it. So this is another program which is on the anvil and which will be launched very soon. The third major initiative is on natural farming. Natural farming is our target is to make about 1 crore farmers graduate to natural farming, And this is the plan is through our agriculture universities, through our KVKs, our various ICAR scientific institutions, to promote them to practice natural farming. And how it is to be done is that establish about 10,000 bioresource centers and about 15,000 clusters across the country where you promote natural farming. And also concentrate on dryland areas, concentrate on our river ecosystems, especially Namami Gange is one river ecosystem where natural farming will be promoted in a big way. And to in fact encourage farming with the low chemical input usage, and use our various institutions, which are the FPOs, the cooperative societies, the SHGs, which is the SRLMs. So through these, and also one brand certification for natural farming products across the country. That along with that would have a huge potential for carbon sequestration again, and to help them with carbon credits. So this is broadly what is being undertaken under climate resilient agriculture in the ministry. The second major initiative is on digital agriculture. Now, digital agriculture is being promoted in a big way in the ministry, and how this is being done is the whole idea is to develop the digital data on agriculture, which is available as a public good. And how we are doing it is it's basically there's something known as an AgriStack, which is a registry. At the foundation of AgriStack is the core farmers data, which is basically the land records data and the historical data of what is being sown. That is being done through various methods, satellite mapping, and also through on-ground ground truthing exercises. And you have certain registries. You must have heard this was being done in Karnataka for a long time now. The same model is being replicated across the country, and about 10-12 states are already on board, and the whole country will come on board very soon. So at the ground layer is your data of fields, farmers, plus the sown area, and then various layers are being added to it. One layer is like the soil card data, the soil health card data, which is available nationally now. That is one layer which comes on it. Then the Fasal Bima, which is the crop insurance, that is another data which comes on it. Then you have the PM Kisan data when we distribute the 6,000 rupees annually to each farmer. That data comes on it. So the whole idea is that once this kind of a registry is developed, parallelly how it is used, it will be available to anybody, even the private sector for planning, the companies, the corporates. We say that in India right now the corporate investment in agriculture is very low. It's less than 1% or something. And one major issue here is lack of data and lack of information. So that is one. The second part is that right now the trainings, the scientific research, and other layers are also being worked at parallelly. So whatever training material you have, whatever our ICR institutes have developed till now, and the agriculture universities have developed, all that data is also being digitized. And then the crop advisories are also being worked at with various AI companies. It's a very interesting model which the ministry has adopted right now. So in each sector you will have one of the leading nationally or internationally private player. For example, we are working with Vadvani AI. We are working with BMGF. Now Vadvani AI we are working with and Digital Green to basically how do we disseminate training. Now once you have this baseline data, you know which farmer is sowing which crop in which season, let us say historically for the 5 years, and what kind of inputs the farmer would be requiring, what kind of know-how the farmer would be requiring, what kind of data the farmer would be requiring, and also the crop cutting experiments, etc., are also being built into this agri stack. So you know the output, you know at the click of a button you can even drill down to a farm and get all this data, and at the same time the farmer on his mobile can, through a chatbot, can approach these AI platforms and can seek all the information the farmer needs. If there's any pesticide, you just click a photograph and you upload it, and then the chatbot activates and tells you. Or if you inspect anything on your lands or on your field, you can click a picture and you can put it on the chatbot, and then the chatbot works and lets you know that what could this be and what are the solutions, etc. So that should be, I think, in place in another 2-3 years, but then that's going on at a very good pace, and that holds very good for our farmers. These are largely the two areas. I deal with marketing, but I'm not talking of marketing or FPOs right now. If there are any questions, I can take that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is what we wanted to hear. One, there is a lot of focus on climate resilient agriculture. It has different components. Of course, I would be looking very closely at the voluntary carbon market, how the aggregation of farmers can actually access it. That's the process difficulty that we have to address. And yesterday there was a separate session on led by Digital Green on digitization, and we are very happy to hear that your agri stack will be an open source which can be accessed by people, including farmers, for whatever planning or whatever advisory. This is really great news. Of course, we will wait for the rollout and see how it goes. So thank you very much. There may be some questions on FPOs in the later half, so we will come back to that. So can I now request Mr. Kuldeep Chand from NABARD to let us know about the future of agriculture finance as far as NABARD is concerned.
Yeah, good afternoon everybody, distinguished panelists and August gathering, because gathering is very diverse, having international delegates as well as national from different agencies. So I will be keeping in all the view what NABARD is doing in agriculture, how we are financing, what are the new things we are going and new things are coming. I will briefly focus on all the things. So because NABARD, many people may not be knowing, so NABARD is a national bank for agriculture and rural development in India. It is our main mission is to develop agriculture and finance agriculture and do the rural development and to reach to the farthest corner of the village. So the financing is one of the our function. Then there is a developmental function and there are the supervisory functions. So keeping in all the view, we are looking after regional rural banks and cooperative banks particularly. And for agriculture financing, out of the 100 rupees, 25%, 25 rupees is being driven through this rural cooperative system, a rural cooperative financial system, that is cooperative bank and regional rural banks. So NABARD is looking after agriculture financing. For that we are credit planning at the district level, block level, and we fix the target how much should be for the priority sector and how should be the agriculture. As per Reserve Bank of India policy, 40 out of 100 rupees, 40 rupees should go to the priority sector and 80 rupees should be 18% of the total credit should go to the agriculture. So we are monitoring that in the state level bankers committee. So as far as agriculture area, we are financing some of the innovative projects through our farm sector promotion fund, In that, different type of projects are being financed all over India through KVK, Research Institute, NGOs, and with the main objective to transfer the technology from the research institutions of ICR to the field level. And then there are the tribal development projects, because tribal do not have the livelihood. So tribal development, what we are doing, we are creating some livelihood opportunity in the very farthest areas where there is no access to the either to the income or something else. They do have land, so we are creating small orchard of 1 acre each. And this project we have started in 2004, and till now we have around 1000 projects, mainly having sanction of 2000 crore, more than 2000 crore. That is how we are doing. And in climate change, because agriculture is climate is impacted the agriculture, so NABARD is the national implementing entity for the adaptation fund and national adaptation from climate change of the Ministry of Environment and Forest, and also direct access entity of the climate change fund, green climate change fund. So we are financing around 40 projects all over the country, overall cost of around 2000 crore in the field of adaptation, mainly for adaptation in the agriculture. And other new things which are coming, because cooperative system we are financing, there is one agency which is known as PACS, Primary Agriculture Cooperative Society. It is the ground level institution which seems to be weak in technology. So with the help of Government of India, Ministry of Cooperation, we are now trying to computerize around 63,000 PACS to create transparency, to increase their credit offtake and technology transfer as well, and with the help of around 2,500 crore. That is the one thing which we are taking up. And these PACS, now we are creating storage system, that is the largest grade storage, that is also through Ministry of Cooperation. And at this we are giving loans at 1% to the PACS. Finally it comes to the 1%. That is the thing which right now is going on. So regarding FPOs, farmer producer companies or FPOs, we have started this creation around about 2014, and you will be glad that the Ministry of Agriculture is supporting right now these FPOs and FPCs, and right now we have 7,000 FPCs. Our aim is to create an ecosystem where bank finance comes to the FPCs. So for creating that ecosystem, we are financing it through our subsidiary, which is 100% supported subsidiary of NABARD. It is NAB Kisan, and around we have supported around NAB Kisan has given loan to 1,000 FPCs right now, and second one is State Bank of India, who have given loan to the 500 FPCs. So that is that one ecosystem. Slowly the banks will come mainstream, and the banking mainstream banks will be starting the financing FPCs and FPOs at the ground level. Then there is a credit guarantee scheme of Ministry of Agriculture, which is being implemented by NABARD through its subsidiary called NAB Function for the FPOs, for the animal husbandry sector, as well fishery and aquaculture sector. And also Kisan credit card, because farmers getting 4% at the ground level. So Ministry of Agriculture providing interest subvention scheme, interest subvention of to the farmers through NABARD at a very cost effective measure. And now the new thing is coming, directly Ministry will be going through portal or some app. It will be transferring those interest subvention to the bank account directly. So NABARD, as you know, to create the demand, we should have the infrastructure at the ground level. So out of the 8 lakh crore which we are giving loan to the villages and all that, out of that 50%, 4 lakh crore is going for infrastructure, and out of through RIDF state government, and also we have supporting government of India through extra budgetary resources earlier, just like this is micro irrigation fund, then LITF is there, long term irrigation fund, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana for creating rural habitation, Swachh Bharat Mission for creating toilets at the in the rural area. Just like giving the agriculture new image or reimagining the agriculture. Now we have started to create ecosystem which is innovative and to support agri innovations. And for that agri innovation, we have created, we are supporting agri incubation centers at 7 places with about 63 crore of grant support from NABARD. And now Ministry of Agriculture and Government of India is coming with blended fund where PPP mode will be there. Around 250 crore will be Government of India is contributing, 250 NABARD, and 250 will be the private investors, which will support these agri startups in the future, so that more and more agri startups come in the agri space. Just like that, we have the Jiva project where we are supporting the natural farming, and where we are taking each and every agroecological consideration, and around 13 states has been covered with the support of KFW and GIZ. And one more initiative is to create marketing for these FPOs. And for marketing, there is a one online platform has been created, that is ONDC, Open Network Digital Commerce, and we have supported that along with SIDBI and many players. And now we are trying to onboard FPOs on this platform, and also create giving marketing opportunity. We are organizing melas with SFAC, and now this 27th December we will be doing it this Delhi Heart, INA Delhi Heart. So those are the activities the NABARD is taking place, and because this is a millet year, International Year of Millet, we are piloting many projects, pilot projects in many states to give fillip to the production, productivity, and also the processing part of the millets. And after that, because everything crop growing and each and agriculture activity requires some scale of finance from the banking side. So our district level technical committee, they are every year revising the scale of finance. That is the cost at which the cultivation is being done. And unit cost NABARD is fixing every year. It is indicative cost which dairy project or some poultry projects or some horticulture or these activities will be done. So that is to give the indication to the bank branch how much funding has to be done at the ground level. So these are things which NABARD is rightly doing, and in future we are now going towards three things clearly. One is the agri startup ecosystem, then second is the climate change adaptation, and third is we are going to NRM and organic farming, sustainability, sustainable farming and all that. So those are the areas where NABARD would definitely take the agriculture in future with support from the respective ministries, that is Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Finance and other ministries, and Niti Aayog as well. So that is NABARD have the vision, and in future we see that small and agriculture that farmers, they form small farmer producer companies, and they can be competed, and consumer at Delhi can purchase directly from farthest of FPCs in the through online platform. So that how this business ecosystem in the future and agriculture is going to be. And for that capacity building of the farmers, we have the financial inclusion fund, technology fund, financial inclusion fund. In that we are giving training and capacity building to the farmers, how to use the financial technologies. how to use the digital marketing, how to train them basically transaction, security, online KYC and all that. So those trainings are being done. So that's how NABARD briefly, the activities I have given in very brief, and certainly there will be questions. I will be happy to take all those questions, and that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuldeep Chand. You've given an overview of what NABARD is doing and what NABARD intends to do in the future. I have only a few comments, not really a question. You said about the Global Green Climate Fund or Global Fund. I do understand from my friends in the World Bank that we could get much more money out of that fund. I mean, that's something that I've got as a personal feedback. So you might want to look at how much more we can get in view of the 3 areas that you are wanting to take up. The second, of course, is, since Mr. Kidwai is also here, how do we make the FPCs or the FPOs in a larger context much larger and more efficient marketing organizations and business organizations, which they are supposed to be, from the number game that we have been looking at so far, and that will bring about a major change. And this I am saying with a lot of experience at the back of my mind, because I was also chairman of the NDDB, so that's where I come from. The only other suggestion I have is what I heard yesterday, that given the challenges of climate smart farming, some of the financial products and processes may need a little bit of readjustment, because the time taken may be longer, the cost rigidity may not apply. So those are suggestions that I have. Now let me request Soumya Swaminathan. I forgot to mention that she has just taken over as the chairman of the MSSRF, and I've seen MSSRF many times during my career, and it's something that I think all of us should be proud of. The way they work with farmers, the way they try and solve the problems of farmers and address their concerns is something of a model that I think our research system need to learn, and even for those who are in the field of agriculture. Soumya.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and thanks to Ajayveer also for the invitation to be here today. So I will start by addressing from the health viewpoint, because I'm a medical doctor, and of course I was at WHO during the pandemic, and even at that time what struck me was that one of the root causes of this type of a zoonotic outbreak that occurs where viruses jump from animals to humans is basically the interaction between the loss of biodiversity, climate change, increasing urbanization, close contact with humans and animals, but also the illegal wildlife trade that happens with many especially endangered species of wild animals, and the frequent contact between wild and domesticated animals. So it's clear that in the future these kind of zoonotic infections are going to occur more frequently. If you look at the last 200 years, you'll see that these jumps have been happening more and more frequently in the last 50 years. And so at any point there could be a coronavirus or an influenza virus or some other virus. There are now 27 families of viruses that the WHO is working on, from which these type of infections could occur. So I think this goes back to what we call One Health approach now, which is actually a very broad umbrella for addressing many of the challenges that we face today, including those that were mentioned already. And so One Health for some people is better surveillance, of infections across animal and plant and humans. And trying to make those surveillance systems talk to each other so that if there is something unusual going on in animals, then at least you can take preventive measures, but also deal with those animal diseases. Like when I was in ICMR, I remember we had this outbreak of CCHF, it's a hemorrhagic fever, where basically once a survey was done of sheep and goats across the country, it was found that quite a significant proportion, I think it was close to 20% of them had antibodies. So it's not a rare disease in animals, and yet when it does infect humans, it has a very high fatality rate. And so similarly, I think this lumpy skin disease and many other infections which in animals also need attention. They need new vaccines, they need more R&D, and just as we saw for COVID, the R&D, once it was prioritized, it really, the science actually delivered, and we had diagnostics, we had drugs, we had vaccines in record time. So it's a question of prioritizing and also governments stewarding and funding such research. So I think it's really important when we talk about research that priorities are identified at the national level, and that there is some sort of stewardship of research. It's not that government has to do or can do all the research, but I think making sure that the financing is available, that the private sector is involved in the right ways, and also that issues of equity are addressed. Now, issues of equity are, it's a cross-cutting issue. It's not just about health, but it's in any sphere that we see, the people who are at the bottom of the pile are always facing the repeated challenges, and each challenge actually makes things worse. And we've seen recently in the cyclone Michaung and the floods that happened across large parts of the coast of Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, that it's again the very poor who live on the banks of the river, as well as the fishermen who along the coast are the ones who always take a hit. So I think in our national policies and frameworks as well, we have to keep equity at the heart of everything that we do. Otherwise, we'll find that the same people get benefited by the policies and the same people get left out. This also, of course, brings us to the issue of gender. And it is important again that in all of our policies we see the role of women and how they may be impacted either positively or negatively. It is true that in many policy-making bodies there's a predominance of men, so that's one, I think, and that's common all over the world, not just in India. My mother was a big champion for working women and for early childhood development and education, and she always made the point that if you don't have women who've experienced childbirth and childcare, then it's very difficult for the policies to be made in a friendly manner. And even today, I've heard in many places the same struggles of not having adequate places for breastfeeding, not having creches, etc. And it's very relevant because even when you think about farm women, I think one of the reasons why we are facing this challenge of persistent malnutrition and persistent stunting is that if you go into the villages where predominantly women are working in the fields, the 6-month to 3-year child is a child who's abandoned, in the sense that the Anganwadis take babies after they turn 3, and then up to 6 months the mother is supposed to be breastfeeding and taking maternity leave. Of course, that happens only in the organized sector. In the unorganized sector, there is nobody to give her leave or anything like that, so she has to work. And so either she has to take the baby with her or leave the baby with somebody. So the baby is often left with an elder sibling or with older adult, a grandmother perhaps. This happens both in urban as well as in rural areas. In the urban slums, if you see, then children are often left with an older sibling. This means that in that very critical period, these babies are not getting either the nutrition or the cognitive stimulation that they need. And so again, I think if we want to prioritize human capital, which is going to be critical for the country's development, then we have to pay attention to the first 1,000 days of life. And that is the pregnancy and the first 2 years when maximum brain development actually happens. And repeated surveys have shown that the age at which the babies start falling off the growth curve is immediately after 6 months, when the mother reduces the amount of breastfeeding. Complementary feeds are supposed to be introduced at that time. And the NFHS 5 data showed that only 11% of babies are getting adequate quantity and quality of complementary feeding, only 11%. And so this is where the problem actually begins. And what happens is that if we don't correct it at that point, then it's too late later on. So once the child goes to a school, whatever you feed the child, the stunting is not going to get reversed. The stunting is all determined in the first 2 to 3 years, and it's not just a question of physical development or height alone. It's really a question of the brain development that we are more concerned about. So stunting is a huge issue, I think, which we made some progress, but it's slow, very slow progress. And so again, if you analyze the data, the NFHS data by rural, urban, by wealth quintile, or by SC/ST status, you'll find again that the most, the SC/ST and the lowest wealth quintile have by far the worst rates of stunting, undernutrition, anemia, infant mortality, maternal, any indicator that we want to take on health or nutrition. So this is why I think that we have to reach the unreached, because in every program or policy, and this is very important now that we're talking about digital in everything we do, whether it is finance, of course, where it has been hugely successful and really had its democratized access, to finances for the poor, where everybody now has the UPI on their phone. But similarly for agriculture and for health, we're talking about the health stack and the agriculture stack. We're talking about the use of AI, etc. We need to ensure that the same people who did not have access to the physical services should not be left out because they don't have access to the digital services. Because we know that India is still better off, but still in half, 50% of the population of the world does not have access to data or to internet, even though they may have a mobile phone. So going back to health again and food systems and the linkage, I think what is also not very well understood is the fact that the healthcare delivery system actually accounts for only about 20 to 30% of your health outcomes. So once you get sick, then of course you need access to a doctor, you need access to a health center, you need access to good quality diagnostics and drugs, but that's the 20 to 30% of your health. And the 70 to 80% is determined by what we call the social, environmental, economic determinants of health, which is where you live, the air you breathe, the food that you eat, whether you have access to safe water, sanitation, mental health, do you have access to green spaces, etc. So if 70 to 80% of our health is being determined by these factors, but the health ministry, the way it is designed, is obviously focusing on the healthcare delivery aspect. But what needs to happen is that they need to become stewards or champions of health in terms of the policies in other departments. For example, if I think a comment was made about nutrition and agriculture, I think health, nutrition, agriculture really need to sit together to say what should be the ideal policies. And we heard from the ministry about the really very exciting developments in terms of climate smart agriculture, natural farming, etc. But what's going to be the impact on nutrition and health? And again, I think reducing the amount of pesticides that we use definitely will have a very positive impact on health. So it could be a win-win, and therefore some of the incentives that are being given now, some of the policies around the use of fertilizers and pesticides. Fertilizer also, because we know that soil health determines the nutritional property of the crops that grow there and what we eat thereby. So if you soil which is very deficient in zinc or iron or any other mineral, you're going to get a crop also that's deficient in those micronutrients, and then you're going to eat that and it'll be further deficient. So in terms of coming together and trying to address these determinants of health, I think diet is probably the number one factor that determines people's health. And today we have the double burden of malnutrition in many countries. Certainly in India we're seeing, and the double burden of malnutrition is not just at the country level where you have some undernutrition and overnutrition, but it's within families and community. In the same family you will have a stunted child and an obese mother, or a stunted child who also then becomes obese later. So, and on top of that, anemia. So the double burden of malnutrition basically arises because of the diet being inadequate in terms of its nutritional value. And there have been many reports and analyses recently to say that about 75% of Indians cannot afford what the NIN calls a nutritious plate of food. So I think the affordability and access to nutritious food should be the number one priority for agriculture today. And my father used to say very often, and I've heard him say quite often, that all nutritional maladies will have agricultural or horticultural remedies. So ultimately, what we eat or what is available for us to eat is dependent on what our farmers are growing and also the supply chains, etc., so that it's accessible to us. So I think in addition to focusing on the diversification and of agriculture, etc., the intercropping, the natural farming, all of those are really very important. We also need to focus on how do we get those products onto people's plates. And this is where I think the PDS and the school meals and the Anganwadis can make a very big difference, because that's something the government actually controls, and it's a government program. So school meals, for example, can be made more nutritious. Similarly, Anganwadi meals, as well as the PDS. And today we know that the majority of uptake from the PDS is cereal. Few states have millets, but the quantities and the number of states where the millet is offered is still very limited, and pulses also and healthy oils are also not very widely available. So when I go to the ration shop, I see people buying, mostly they'll take their entire whatever rice or wheat that they are entitled to, but only 1 kilogram of dal for the family and 1 kilogram of usually palm oil, I think, which is not the best oil for health, from the health point of view. So I think this is, sometimes we do come into conflict between maybe the immediate economic need and a health which is a more longer term. And so there are trade-offs, but there are also huge co-benefits. So rather than focusing on the trade-offs, I think if we start focusing on what are the benefits, co-benefits, where can there be synergies, then we can, I think, make progress on our nutritional, where we have to focus now on reducing obesity at the same time as we're trying to reduce stunting and anemia. And then finally, I think we do have other levers. I talked about the PDS and school meals as one lever we have. We also have the regulatory bodies like FSSAI, who can make policies that can promote healthier eating. For example, if in Singapore they have a system where on all marketed packaged food, on processed food, there's a A, B, C, D marking, and the C and the D basically indicate that it's unhealthy. It's either too high in fat, sugar, or salt. And the company then is not allowed to do any advertising or marketing if they have a C or a D mark. And the consumer can immediately see that what they're buying is not the healthiest option. So they might rather go for an A or B stamped product. Similarly, the traffic light system, you have the red, green, orange, front of what is called the front of pack labeling, which you don't have to be highly literate, because if we have this small, how many of us actually read the pack label before we buy or consume something, right? Sometimes after you've eaten it, you look at it and say, oh my God, I did not have so much of sugar. But if you had a front of pack labeling where anyone could see by looking at the packet, if it was an unhealthy level of sugar, salt or fat, these are the three things that we want to focus on, then consumer can also have a better informed choice, as well as there are many other behavioral nudges that we need to think about to promote healthier eating and to discourage unhealthy, and taxation is one of the best. So in Thailand, again, a country which has been a pioneer in primary health care with a big focus on health promotion, not just on provision of services. One of the things they did was set up an Institute of Health Promotion and Policy, which looked at things like sugar sweetened, how do you reduce sugar consumption or salt consumption in the population. And it's quite cultural because their food has a lot of sugar and salt in it because of the fish sauce and things like that. So how do you get people to change their eating habits? If it's cultural, it's difficult. Road safety, air pollution, I think these are all issues which impact our health in such a big way. You need a separate group of people thinking about policies, and that institution or that group could be funded through these taxes. Health, we could call them, in Thailand for some time they were calling them sin taxes, but we don't have to, we can call them health taxes. We have tax on tobacco, a tax on alcohol, you could tax sugar sweetened beverages, and that does two things. It reduces the people from consuming them, because obviously if you raise prices, it is a good disincentive to buy, or at least you reduce amount that you will consume, and it brings money into the pot, which hopefully then should be further turned around and spent on health. So there are fiscal policies also, I think, that can promote healthy eating, and through that better health. I'll stop for now. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. That was brilliant, and I thought you brought a whole new perspective to our discussion. And I'm particularly happy that you flagged equity and gender. In fact, even I didn't realize that farm women would be out of work at some point of time, and what will happen to their children. Something that completely missed my thought process. Thank you for bringing that out. I suppose either in NREGA or elsewhere, when we talk about farm and farm labor, we will have to look at this children who could be left behind because they have to earn an income. I think it's a very important point that we might have missed in policy, so probably flag it out straight away. And digital inclusion, I think it's for you, Mr. Kidwai. I think those who are already excluded should not be further excluded. I think it's a very, very, very fair point. And I do agree that the PDS, MDM, ICDS complex needs a little bit of redesigning. It was done for certain reasons at that time which were relevant. So I think the time has come probably to look at more things. And of course, the labeling issues have always remained a very important issue. Now, can I turn to David? Yeah.
Well, this has been a really, for me, fascinating panel, and also, so far, an extraordinary dialogue session. I'm going to just give a talk which is based on words beginning with two letters. The first letter is evolving as a child health doctor, because like Dr. Soumya, I come from the health sector. I went to Chennai to visit with him, and he told me very clearly that although he had invested so much of his life in agriculture, he was the father, of course, of the Green Revolution in this country, in his words, but he said, actually what matters to me now is focusing on nutrition, focusing on access to water, on ecology, and on environments. And he said, just stay with this, David, because you'll find that if you can think more broadly than just in one sector, it will lead to you having a more effective impact in the areas that interest you. Those words stayed with me. I found myself thinking of MS Swaminathan as the ultimate weaver between agriculture, health, nutrition and gender, and I thought to myself, I'd like to be like that. And so it's with enormous joy that I'm here sharing a panel with Dr. Soumya, who I also had the chance to work with quite a lot when she was chief scientist in the World Health Organization. So here are my S's. I'll watch the time. Okay? Thank you. Both saying at the same time. First one is sustainable development. I go back to 2012. I was working in the United Nations. I was alongside and carrying the files of Ban Ki-moon, who was then the Secretary General. We went to a meeting in Rio de Janeiro. It was to plan the development agenda for 2015 onwards. Remember, 2012, we were in the middle of the 15-year period of the Millennium Development Goals. And the Millennium Development Goals were defined by technicians who said we want to have issues that can be solved using presently available technology. And so we had a series of goals that were designed for poor people in poor countries with technologies that would lead to changes in 8 domains. And I'm afraid food and hunger was pretty well relegated to Millennium Development Goal 1C and was somewhat neglected. But when we arrived in Rio de Janeiro, the Secretary General said to me, we've got a problem here. And the problem was that we had more and more countries saying publicly, we don't want our development to be defined in terms of what the technical interventions are that will make a difference. We want development to be about what really matters to our people. And we want the rich countries to be part of the agenda as well as the poor countries, because the rich countries have got a lot to answer for. And that was the beginning of a 3-year period of negotiation to yield the Sustainable Development Agenda. Now, the 17 goals are important, but you shouldn't see them as goals and targets to be tackled with projects designed for the targets. What matters is the overall sense in the Sustainable Development Agenda that it's time to stop working in separate silos, to stop working in separate sectors, and realise that people's lives are actually influenced by a whole series of issues that come together in the places where they live and they work. So the Sustainable Development Agenda, for me, is vital. That's why I walk around with this little pin, which was developed to really show that the Sustainable Development Agenda was a compass for the future. So that's my first S. My second S is systems. You can't deal with complexity with linear approaches alone. Quite simply, as we've learnt in health, as you heard just now from Dr. Soumya, we've learnt in agriculture, as you heard from all our panellists, but particularly I thought from when Manoj was speaking, quite simply, systems thinking is the only way to approach these issues. Systems thinking is not easy. We're not taught it at school. You might be teaching it in some of the universities, but actually it causes a lot of us to feel discomfort because you don't end up with single causes. You don't end up with obvious things to scale up. You end up with a whole series of interdependent and interacting variables that once you get into it and practice it, it makes life an awful lot easier. You recognise that there are always different perspectives on issues. There's not a single truth, and you work with those multiple perspectives. Third S, shocks. We've had some pretty remarkable shocks affecting the world in the last few years. COVID-19 still for me is a most extraordinary shock, and I don't think the world's recovered from it. I think we're still grieving, actually. But there's also been accelerating climate change. And it's getting faster and faster. We've seen graphs that have shown that in the session yesterday, led by the MSS Foundation. There was a lot of discussion about the acceleration. And then we've also had conflicts, which are increasing at an unfortunate rate because non-violent resolution of conflict, which has got its origins very much in this country, has kind of been forgotten. And people have decided to go and bomb and beat and use violence as a way of resolving conflict, which all it does is it paralyses development. And then the fourth is the cost of living increase, which is particularly affecting poor people everywhere. Poor countries, 1/4 of the world's countries are affected by it. So there's been these huge systems shocks, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, and we're still, as a world, experiencing them. And unfortunately, the poor, probably 1.5 billion people, are getting poorer. Number 4, structures. I think I've learnt that you can't actually achieve much in development without addressing structures. And structures mean the factors in society that create power imbalances and keep those power imbalances in place, that make it super hard for people without power to escape from where they are, that concentrate power in particular ethnic groups or particular commercial activities, like we've got in food, where actually an awful lot of power is concentrated in the hands of a relatively small number of entities. But dealing with these structures through different kinds of governance, through different kinds of accountability, through different kinds of engagement, through indeed also different training of personnel so that they understand about the power dimensions, is really important. So my 4th S is about structures, because I don't think we will be able to advance without understanding what the structures are and addressing them. My 5th S is about science. And I just want to raise one question with you. I think most of the 50 people in this room are scientists. You would define yourselves as scientists. You would explain yourselves to your children as scientists. What are scientists? I think they're people who are really good at testing hypotheses and seeing whether or not they turn out to be wrong. A scientist likes to test. But often scientists are viewed differently in society. They're viewed as sources of truth. So I want to put to you that it would be much better if scientists portrayed themselves as testers rather than truthers, because there isn't a truth. Not if you're a systems thinker. You've got different sciences, and the different sciences often don't give you the same answer. Next, S. Shape, scale, and speed. I put them together because often in development work, we're chided because we've got the shape wrong, or we've not put enough scale into it, or we're not moving quickly enough. Because, 2030, we've got to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Earth is overheating. So everything's got to be rushed. I'm not so sure. Yes, I think scale matters. Yes, I think speed matters. Yes, I think the shape of the work we do matters. But I want to stress that at the end of it, it's the style that matters the most. Do we engage? Do we collaborate? Do we connect? If we don't, we can be as fast as we like, and we can be as clever as we like at going to scale, but we'll make terrible mistakes. And we've seen some of those. I don't want to harp on them, but going too fast with the wrong stuff doesn't work right. And then lastly, in my S's, self. How do we work effectively in a world where there are competing challenges, where we have to be systems thinkers, where often, because we're system thinkers, we go into the political realm and we find it pretty horrible, or we find ourselves feeling extremely uncomfortable because we're trying to take on big interests? How do we look after ourselves in all this? That's why I like coming to these dialogues. These dialogues understand that in this kind of work, Self is key, and care for self is essential, and that's what you all do, and I really value you for it. So my second group of words begin with C. That given we are working in systems, given that we are tackling structures, given that our systems are shocked, given that as scientists we're not truthers but we're testers, given that we want to focus on the style rather than necessarily speed and scale, what are we actually doing? Answer: we're all emerging as weavers, blenders, connectors. And so my C words begin. We connect, but most importantly we connect with people we don't normally connect with. People we may not necessarily appreciate. People perhaps we don't like. We operate outside our comfort zones because that's where the best results happen. We see that very much in this country. The fashion is one of connecting. What we're doing more and more, and we've heard it during these dialogues, is we're converging across sectors, across interests, among different stakeholders. We're not satisfied with staying with the status quo in our own stovepipes, our own silos. We're saying the future is about connecting across the silos. That's why we do dialogue. We don't do dialogue because we just want to talk. We do dialogue because it matters. Because the converging helps us to find better ways of working, and that leads to new forms of collaboration. But to do that, as well as looking after ourselves, we need courage. Because we are going to have to take people on and situations on. But that's what us 50, we're 50 in this room, that's what we are. We're people of courage. And that takes me back to Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. If there's one thing that I feel about that man, and what he taught me, and what I think he's taught all of us, is you can't do this stuff without being courageous. Thank you to all of you of courage. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Only you could have done this. Brilliant. We'll take a few questions, but questions, please. If you have disagreements, opinions, please reserve them. If you want to seek a clarification or a question, please. Yep. Rohit first, then Vinny, come back to you.
Dr. Swaminathan, Rohit here from National Coalition for Natural Farming. Sometimes we feel that traditional forms of knowledge in nutrition often get left behind. And I would like to seek your opinion on, I'm giving a couple of examples where we have two different opposing forms of nutrition. One, for instance, example would be, let's say, if you look at fortification, where rice oil would be polished, refined, and then fortified, compared to, let's say, unrefined oil, unpolished, semi-polished rice, which they are two very different opposing directions. And second, again, would be an example in, let's say, where we have themes on biofortification compared to traditional seed varieties, where we know that these do have a strong nutrition focus. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. And one for Mr. Kidwai, just following on that as well. So one part being on NICRA, where you mentioned there is work happening on climate resilient seeds. Would traditional seeds also find a place in that? And also on climate smart agriculture, where under in the name of climate smart agriculture, sometimes we see drones using pesticides, fertilizers, those sort of things also being promoted. So I just wanted to hear. I know they probably don't fall under what you mentioned, but yeah, I don't know if it falls somewhere else in the ministry. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that question. So I think that it's about the problem that one is trying to solve. So it's not just an academic debate, is this better than that, but I think it's the problem and the nature and the scale of the problem and what solutions may be available. And I think there are always multiple solutions like some of the alternatives you gave, so I think there should be an informed decision made based on not only what is technologically feasible but also what is sustainable, and looking at the environmental impacts and the longer term impacts as well, where you will look at the economic impact, the social impact and the environmental impact of a particular intervention. So for example, I think fortification is okay for chemical fortification, that is, for some period of time, because if you have an entire population that's facing a certain large amount of micronutrient deficiency, but that will not be the long-term sustainable solution, which is going to be basically to improve dietary diversity and have people consume naturally healthy diet. That's what the goal should be. But maybe in the interim you will need other things to be done. And similarly, I think selection of seeds, etc., I would apply that type of analytical approach.
Just a short response. So the traditional seeds and the traditional knowledge, which is very much a part of our resource base, but then you're right in saying that it has somehow not been given the kind of importance it should be given. There are projects, it's not that there aren't projects, there are projects which are there to conserve them, to study them and to see their usefulness, not only in terms of nutrition but also in terms of preserving our heritage and also their environmental impact. But it's really not on scale. What is needed is to take it up on scale, and the good part is that if it's not led by government, a lot of work is going on by the civil society on their own. Farmers are doing it. So that is one. And second, on the climate smart agriculture, I think one is water conservation. 80% of our water usage is on irrigation. Now that is a big challenge, and there are programs which have been designed. You have the Krishi Sinchai Yojana and the per drop more crop and things like that, which have which are the good part is that they are there. The scale is still something which needs to be taken up, and now for example the Water Resources Ministry is coming with the whole command area development program where you have precision irrigation which saves a lot of water. That is there. As far as drones etc. are concerned, drones would be needed. I think still there is a program. The Prime Minister launched a Drone Didi program, and so the idea is to train a certain number of women on the usage of drones and to give them drones, and then they start using it. But there are certain challenges also with it. For example, the land holdings are very small. Now managing a drone in such a small land holding, first of all, is a challenge in itself, and secondly the economic viability of because you need a certain area on which to operate a drone to make the whole thing economically viable. But at the same time, looking at the rising prices of the labor costs, so someday I'm sure once the labor costs, there's some kind of an equilibrium between the two, so the drone would become viable for farmers to use at a big scale. And especially for FPOs and with having contiguous farming, those could be very promising for something like drones and using this kind of agriculture.
Thank you. I have one suggestion to Mr. Kidwai. This is something I failed, so I'm passing it on to you. Whenever ICR releases a variety, they don't give any nutrition data in the release order. Is it something that we cannot do, or we don't want to do, or we can start doing? Just a question. You can take it back to Manoj. maybe push it through. It might be a good thing to do because I found examples from landrace, old varieties where the nutrition data is much more rich.
See, so actually, till now it's production and productivity. Nutrition somewhere got off the track. So, it has to be both sides. There has to be a demand side also movement where people start demanding these things. Now, millets, for example, with this whole movement on millets, the demand is coming up. And once the demand comes up, the market will have a mechanism of supply. So yes, you're right, what you said.
Okay, I'll tell you the millet story later. Let me go to the next question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mini, agricultural policy analyst. So it's a great pleasure listening to you all, and it's, as Dr. Jayahari was telling, it's like reading a few books when we get opportunity to listen to them. So my question is to Kidwai sir and Kuldeep sir, because you people, you are engaged in FPO formation and taking the one is making policy and the one is financing it. So my question is, in that one district, one product, one district, one product stipulation about in FPOs, that I'm aware that that is necessary for scaling up and aggregation and for any agri industry to take off in local. But at the same time, the same body, policy making body, is promoting natural farming and where the insistence is on polycropping, multi-cropping. Because the other side, one district, one product will be promoting monoculture, monocropping, and again, when it percolates to monopoly, all those things, competition for above ground, below ground resources, all those things happen. But we are building a fiscal capital there. But at the same time, if we are promoting natural farming, we are building a human capital when we are banking on this nutrition aspect. So how we can engage with these two policies which have got kind of conflicts in interest superficially?
Yeah. Kidwai first and then.
So this is classic government for you. Policies are designed keeping a certain objective in mind. Now, why did the FPO policy come up? The FPO policy basically came up because we have very small land holdings which are not viable. So the idea was that if a certain number of farmers get together, they can negotiate with the market. In the input supply, they can negotiate. In the marketing, they can negotiate. And ultimately, the idea was that the processing, etc., value addition is the final stage where they reach up to. So that the basically policies are designed looking at a problem. This was the problem and this was the solution, and we are working on it. The second problem, which is by and large, is that use of chemical inputs is increasing and they are affecting the soil, they are affecting the water, they are affecting health and other conditions. So what is the solution to that? Now, whether ODOP and this can be aligned, why not? I mean, you can look at products which meet all these three standards, but then the crux is that at the ground level where all these policies go ultimately, where they are being implemented, and there are instances where you have very innovative kind of, I would say, a few administrators and farmers and others who think through, you have them converging a lot of policy and making solutions which work on that kind of a convergence. For example, if there's an FPO in a Namami Gange district and you have an ODOP product, or they work out on an ODOP product, which they may take up any agriculture product, but then if they say it's made by an FPO and it comes from an area where natural farming with low chemical and low pesticide and proper branding and testing, that would add value to it. But yes, governments make policies looking at problems in silos. It's not one solution fits all.
Would you like to add something to that?
Certainly there is contradiction in both the things. When we talk about the scale, then one district, one product is good idea. But when we talk about the sustainability, then NRM is the best thing. So the best thing is that if we have balanced NRM practices for the one district, one product. It may be monoculture, but it will be sustainable and marketable, as well as value addition can be done. So both the things can be balanced, and certainly contradiction will always be there, but we have to see what best can be grown and what FPOs at that particular district or particular area is best at, and what climatic conditions are there, which are suited, or what fertilizers and all that inputs. Because NRM, the main limitation is today we don't have that particular inputs which can encourage NRM practicing. But at the same time, we need scale, we need food security and all the things. And finally, we have to keep all the mind, and government of India, I think, works in that way only. Thank you.
Thank you. Even though I, after having heard that question, I don't think there is a conflict, because the FPO is not restricted to that one product in the one district. The FPO can do multiple things. So the FPO can go to natural resource managed products and sell it. It can also do the ODOP. While a combination will be good, but it can also separate itself out and do it, because there is no restriction on one FPO in one district. So there are avenues. The real problem is, I think there is more money on ODOP than on NMSA. I think that's the problem. I think we are getting short of time. Just two questions. Can you ask them together? Then we will take them together. Mr. Kuldeep.
This is a question to Madam Dr. Swaminathan. My name is Kuldeep. I am from the Coalition for Food and Nutrition Security, which was founded by your illustrious father. My question is, ma'am, you brought out a very valid point, the gap in the first 1,000 days of the child. After 6 months, when the breastfeeding period is mandatory, breastfeeding period is over, the child is left with somebody who is not able to take care appropriately, and by the time the child goes to the Anganwadi, time is lost. So the opportunity for cognitive development has been lost. So what are those major policy intervention you would like to recommend or suggest how to go about it? Because this is something where we are quite concerned, and this except that urban craze and rural craze on the paper only a policy remain, but nothing seems to be happening. So some NGOs have been doing something.
Yeah, I think you want her to answer what could be a good policy intervention, particularly focused on rural areas for the problem. Fine. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, so answered by the agricultural data topic, and I wonder if that can be aggregated to national scale to better match what Soumya is looking for in terms of dietary health at the country scale. I mean, I know market demand is that there's a big problem that we're not producing what public health is demanding. So public health demand, I think, has to feature in the picture. And so does your data allow you to aggregate national to better understand where you might prioritize incentives to better match what public health is calling for? On monoculture diversification, I think it's less a farmer capacity, but really this market, there's a scaling economy challenge, right? I mean, a landscape can only have so many processors, distributors, suppliers, and trying to get a landscape where you can support farmers producing diverse crops, I think is a bigger challenge than farmers producing crop diversity. And I think we don't speak enough about that. And I'll conclude by saying, David, use the third S word that Soumya threw at you in terms of synergies. And I think that, we focus a lot on trade-offs. Trade-offs create tribes and tribalism. And I think synergies are how you create the solution spaces where we understand our similarities and our capacity to collaborate on solutions.
Yes, on the 6 month to 3 year child, I think the best solution is to have good creches, actually, because where the mother cannot take care, you don't have a very good care person at home, you need a creche in a convenient location where you can leave the child in the morning. I mean, this is how the whole world actually has solved the problem, and I think it will also solve the problem of women in workforce. We keep on saying that we are seeing a declining trend of women in the workforce rather than an increasing trend, and India in particular, compared to the rest of the world, statistics has a lower, and I think one of the reasons is the child care. It's not only child, it's also home care, elderly care. Women have multiple responsibilities at home, but I think a big chunk of it could be solved by having well-functioning, well-managed creches which provide both safe space, cognitive stimulation and good nutrition. And in the rural areas, I think the MNREGA offers a very good opportunity actually to mobilize women to run these creches in their communities for which they will be paid. But of course then this 100-day rule and things will have to be looked at, because you can't run a creche for 100 days and then leave the child for 200 days. So there are solutions. We need them as much in urban areas as in, and Mobile Creche has been doing this for 50 years now, but that's one organization. So clearly it has to become something that the government takes ownership of. I know that WCD Ministry has a scheme to expand the Anganwadis into creches. Yes.
I don't know, I think earlier we never had adolescent girl also in the ICDS scheme. So I think these were the two groups missing, 6 months to 3-year-old child and the adolescent girl. Now we have inducted adolescent girls in some program. So I don't know, I have a feeling that I just wrote it just before this, that if these adolescent girls who are being trained at the Anganwadi, out of that, some well-trained girls can be probably given the responsibility of creches within the Anganwadi setup. And in any case, these adolescent girls are future mothers. So they will also be learning how to handle. And we have a choice. Out of 10 girls who are trained, maybe 2-3 are very good. They can be given small little employment, that type of a thing. So I thought maybe the Anganwadi center clubbing with this, maybe one of the...
Great. I think it's a good idea. We can... Mr. Kidwai, you need to...
So you made a very pertinent point. Data supposes that in the Indian plate, the pulses have come down, and it's more of cereals now, especially with the PDS system supporting cereals, like ma'am also brought out in her talk. So somewhere it has to do with its MSP is there for 22 crops, and the pricing is there, the rates are much better, but then I think at the end it is a short procurement which is promoting cereals, and because 100% of paddy and wheat is being procured, whereas for now the decision is to start procuring all the pulses which farmers produce. That's one thing, and the other thing which I see is as irrigation increases, the cropping pattern changes. From pulses and oil seeds, it shifts to cereals, and that is where it affects the availability also, and the dietary diversity and the nutrition diversity. So that's a large picture which somewhere we'll have to actually look at, and we have the oil seeds mission, we have the national pulses mission, and the main focus under these missions is to bring in self-sufficiency. But then along with self-sufficiency, the focus is also to increase the nutritional diversity in the country, because there are certain things, for example, we are going to be having the highest number of diabetics in the world, and followed by other such lifestyle diseases. So these are, I think, and we have not really worked out the costs of these, the burden which will come to the country. So if we work out the costs, I think the investments should be worked out on what it is going to cost the country ultimately.
Thank you very much to all the panels, and for Mr. Kidwai, we have a session tomorrow on the true cost of food. So if you are interested, you're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an excellent session. Brilliant panelists. Give them a big hand. And thank you very much. We have a 5-minute break, and we come back for a more exciting session on what for the future. The tea is at the end of the next session, but you can take a break, and if there is tea around, please take it.